Tenakoto di Whanau o Unitarians o Tamaki Mokoro. Tenakoto na Manuhiri. No mai harimai katene whare karakia o te atua. Ko Jonathan Mason toko ingoa. Ko Michigan aho. Ko Allagash tiawa. Ko Ohinaro timonga. Ke Tamaki Mokoro aho e noho ana no reira iro rangatira ma Tenakoto, Tenakoto, Tenakoto katoa. Welcome all, Church Whanau and visitors to this place of worship, virtual and physical, a space made sacred by our coming together today, and by gatherings of Auckland Unitarians for over 122 years. Welcome to those joining us remotely, to those here in the building, and to those watching the recording at a later time. If you are a visitor here for the first time, thank you for choosing to be here with us. If you are a member or regular attendee, thank you for returning to join together in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And afterwards, let us join together for morning tea. It is our sacrament of hospitality. Please join us. It won't be complete without you. For opening words, we are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands that are ready to serve. Together, we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in our world. Now for the chalice lighting. Paul, would you help me in lighting the chalice? We light this chalice here in the short days of winter. This space is one with prayers or questions to be answered and love to be given and received. May this light help guide us until the longer days return again. And now, please say with me the words to our covenant. It's also on 471 for those who have hymn books. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. Now Frank will play the second piece by Drodla called Souvenir. Frank. Today I'm going to talk about the annual pledge drive, but I'm going to begin with why I'm a Unitarian and how I look at the 7 principles up on the wall. And apologies for those with really good memories. I did this talk 5 years ago, and there is some overlap on it. I have changed certain things, but apologies for those with really good memories. I'm Jonathan Mason, longtime member of the church, head of the 24 pledge drive, and happy to come to you today to talk about the state of the congregation, the formal kickoff of this year's 24-25 pledge drive. Grew up as a Unitarian in Detroit, Michigan, stopped. My parents had a disagreement with the minister when I was 12 years old. Minister took teens out to this retreat and they smoked pot. My parents, well, they were liberal, they weren't that liberal. I started going again in 1990 when I was in New York City and met Mary, my partner of 32 years, who's also Unitarian. Because we've moved around a bit, we've been at 7 different congregations back in the US, but been here pretty much since 2000 when we moved from Cincinnati, Ohio to here. So, my Unitarian fourth thing, a free and responsible for search for truth and meaning. There's been several chapters in this search for truth and meaning to me. First came from Unitarian Church at Cincinnati. They had all these divinity scholars from all these pretty conservative Christian churches or universities. And they analyzed the New Testament using reason and rationality, determine what was authentic and what did original Christianity look like. Key takeaways that there were many parts of the New Testament that were not historically accurate, and they had innovative ways to judge their authenticity. And for me, the conference kicked off 15 years of research on the New Testament and the early Christian church. I love history, so it really played to my love of history. And I've given over the years maybe a half dozen talks to the congregation on various aspects of the New Testament seen through a Unitarian lens, including one on the nativity story in December to the congregation. So that was been one ongoing search for truth and meaning. Then I looked increasingly at the last principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence. And I looked at the connection between time and the natural world. So as I've gotten older, I think about my parents and grandparents and the passage of time. And 100 years ago doesn't seem that long anymore. So to give one example, D-Day, just celebrating the 80th anniversary. At the time of D-Day, the land wars in New Zealand, or the American Civil War, was closer in time than we are today to D-Day. So as you get older, time sort of compresses a little bit. And I remember I had a great uncle who fought in World War I and talked with him in the 1960s about his time in the Great War. It's now over 100 years ago. So when I think about historical time, it collapses a bit. But at the same time, I'm awed by how long bird and tree species have been around. And with DNA and just the improvement in science and time analysis, we have a lot more information. And to give a few examples, the Kauri and Rimu trees date back to the time of the dinosaurs, were common trees all around the world 75 million years ago. The Tuatara is a member, I know a lot of you know this, but is a member of the reptile family. It's quite complex and large 100 million years ago, but it's now the only surviving member of the family. And while some birds, I'm a bird watcher, so house sparrows, mynas, have only been in New Zealand for 100 years or less. Others such as kiwis, kakas, kias, moas date back 60 to 80 million years. Outside human dynamics, outside cities, the pulse of non-human natural life has been going on for a far longer time than I can easily comprehend. And these patterns, I look at these patterns, I look at bird migration, and they are as sacred to me as biblical verses to devout Christians and Jews. And one of the problems that we have is 60 million years is to pick a number. It's really hard to comprehend. And the nearest analogy that I can think of is, I hope most of us have been in Eden Park, but take 12 sellouts, every seat taken at Eden Park, and every seat represents 100 years. That represents that 60 million years of time. It's hard to really comprehend. But as the most intelligent species on the earth today, we have the responsibility to try to protect the planet and continue to live as stewards with all the other plant life, animal life in the planet. And it's really consistent with that seventh principle. And I focused just on this topic maybe 10 years ago to the congregation. So just on this. And then, let's see, the final one that I talked about is I've just gotten more and more interested in extraterrestrial life, about whether it's out there. And there's been some great movies. The trilogy that I recommend are Contact, Interstellar, and Arrival, and intelligently explore extraterrestrial life. And then in the last 10 years, powerful telescopes are finding that there are many planets in the solar system, and a lot of them have Goldilocks planets like the Earth. And there's even discussion about sending a very tiny probe at about 2/3 of the speed to light to Alpha Centauri. It would take about 20 years, 15 to 20 years to get there. And they could get data and assess data from that solar system. So about 3 years, I gave a talk just on that. So I take these different things where I wonder about why am I here and how can I make my life give more meaning, and then I share those with the congregation. And you've been great at listening over the last 20 years, intermittently. But that's pretty personal, search for truth and meaning. But there are 3 other reasons I come to this church. 1, the people that I meet in Unitarian congregations are interesting. 2, I'm challenged by the ideas presented at the congregation. And 3, it is important for Unitarianism to have a voice for rationalism in the world over the next 50 years. I said 200, but let's just call it 50. Let me go into a little more detail on those 3. First, people I meet at the Unitarian congregations, and this is the 7 ones we've been here, although mostly here. Some of the best conversations that I've had occur after the service, men's group, adult education. Unitarians attract people who don't have all the answers, but like me are trying to better understand the meaning of life and how to live it in a more personally relevant, satisfying way. Second, challenged by the ideas presented during our services. When I think back upon the great sermons at multiple Unitarian churches, including several from Clay, they have changed the way I think about the world. I've thought about them all week after the service. They've made me aspire to live a better life. And then 3, third benefit of being a Unitarian is to offer a voice of rational hope within a world of increasing populism. By the way, I wrote this paragraph 5 years ago. Unfortunately, it's still very relevant. Much of Europe and North America being increasingly influenced by populist leaders who no longer try to work in the interest of their whole country. They instead appeal to members of their base. It's almost tribal. Try to marginalize whoever is not part of their base. Minority populations are particularly susceptible. And democracy's always struggled with protecting the rights of minorities. It's legitimately one of the weaknesses of democracy. Populism, think about what happened to Yugoslavia when they went democratic. Like there was a period of real unrest. Populism is a threat to all healthy democracies, and we cannot afford to be complacent anywhere, even here in New Zealand. In an era of increasing intolerance and hostility toward minorities in many societies, Unitarians can bring our rationalism, openness, and inclusion and build bridges with similarly tolerant Christian, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, atheists, Hindus to provide needed opposition to fundamentalism and political and social intolerance. And unfortunately, since I wrote these words 5 years ago, if anything, that threat has increased, not decreased. So the three reasons: come to the Unitarian Church because the people that are here, the ideas that I encounter here help me give my life more meaning, and a role that we can play in making the world a better place. And that's why Mary and I consciously give our time and money to the church. So you may be wondering still, and looking at the clock, what about our annual pledge drive? And with that as a background, what I'd say is there's many obligations in life. Most of us get up and go to work each day. Hopefully we like work, but it's also because we need the money. We have to pay taxes. Even family get-togethers have a sense of obligation to them. But here, we come because we choose to be here. We don't have to be here. And we choose to give our money and time to the church when we have very good alternatives for both. Now, the church needs about $70,000 of cash right now to run each year. That's excluding any minister spend. And the big building expense items are insurance, utilities, repairs, music, insurance specifically. Insurance market after the floods has really gone up. So our building insurance, unfortunately, has I'd say, gone up about 30%. So in Terry's budget that he presented at our AGM, we have pledge income of $65,000, rental income of $10,000. Thanks, Corrine, for all your help there. Other fundraising income, that we have a service auction, $5,000. And happily, with the higher interest rates, interest income of $9,000 is there to help pay for our expenses. But with the unexpected passing of our minister, Clay Nelson, last October, we're now in a transition phase. Our current strategy, it goes back 15 years, is we have a dual track of having excellent lay leadership, that's the phase we're in right now, and then securing enough funding for either a part or full-time minister. Now, most of you can't remember, well, maybe half of you can, 40%. 2010, 2013, we were in a similar transition phase. We built up our financial reserves in that time period. And with the help of the Mackey Trust, we were able to secure Clay's services, pay him a part-time salary, and we had sufficient funds to employ Clay for 9 years. And I think we're back in that transition phase to build reserves and develop a strategy to get a minister back in. So in Terry's budget, or the AGM budget, we've earmarked $30,000 for ministerial services, and that'll be the start of building reserves so we don't employ a minister or administrator. Like maybe a minister will come along and we can do something earlier, but in the meantime, build reserves. The average membership unit in our congregation gives about $900. But while pledge income is part of what we need to run the congregation, not everyone is in a financial position to give the average or even half the average. But let me reemphasize the first point I talked about. Unlike so many things in our life, any contribution that you make to the church is voluntary and made because you can afford to and want to. Some of us might not even be able to give as much as last year, and that's okay. Others will make up the difference. The other important point on the pledge drive, not just about money, also considering whether you can give your time as well. Back to John's point during Joys and Concerns. Our church has a management committee, peace and social justice committee, worship committee, people staff. Tess and John are staffing the online option today. Also big fundraising activities such as the service auction in the spring. We need time as much as money. So time and money. Biggest challenge for a modestly sized congregation like us is to pull our weight so active members don't get burned out. Any management committee member would be happy to sit down with you and discuss the church's needs and meet something that you sort of like to do with what the church needs. This is a congregation with an incredible generosity of spirit. On behalf of the whole congregation, thank you for everyone who's given your time and money over the past year. So in closing, I looked through the UUA website and I found a talk from Bill Neely, who is the minister of the Princeton, New Jersey Unitarian congregation. And I loved what he had to say about stewardship, so I'm just going to quote him. Stewardship is our way of saying, we got you. Your fare has been paid by those who've come before. Come on board, sit down, take a rest. You, the stranger, you, the sad, you, the fearful, you who feels alone, your fare has been paid by people of faith who've built these walls and built these ministries and built this faith of hope and love. Many of them aren't even here anymore. Many have died, and yet their gifts live in ministries that exist to welcome, strengthen, and bless you. So come here and know love. Come here and know hope. Come here and know that you are not alone. We got you as others earlier had us. And once you're on the bus and you have your bearings and you have some hope and a sense of your own voice and strength, know that you can get others too. Here in this house, you'll be surrounded by people committed not to reflecting the profanities of this world, but to transforming them into moments of beauty and goodness. You'll be able, with their strength and shared inspiration, to bring others aboard so that they will find warmth and inspiration. Riders who in turn will share that with even more people. You'll be able to, having had your fare paid by those who come before, to pay the fares of those to come, so that this house of love and hope welcomes everyone who seeks its comfort, wisdom, and community. I thought those were really appropriate for this congregation. So thank you for sharing the last 20 minutes with me, listening to my stops on my spiritual journey in looking for the responsible search for truth and meaning. And just as Bill Neely noted, as we look around this 122-year-old building and see the plaques on the walls from previous committed members, and I think about the 6,000 Sunday sermons that have occurred here, I feel honored to be part of this rich tradition and exciting future. Thank you. It is now time to extinguish the chalice. I'll invite you to say the words with me, which John will now put on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So closing words from Kenan Callahan, Stewardship. It's titled Stewardship, the Joy of Giving. Living is giving. We live life best as we give our strengths, gifts, and competencies. We are called to serve, not survive. Our giving makes a difference in our families, our congregation, our community, and our faith. And the two questions for the discussion group is, why do you attend the Unitarian Church? And for visitors, you can just say, I haven't, but I came here for the first day. A friend of mine, John Service, came here for the first day. So that's going to be really easy for you. And then second, how do we keep the church thriving for the next 10 years? So those two little discussion groups. Thank you.